Hello everyone, it's GigaBeef here, and today we're going to be talking about the importance of positioning in Escape from Tarkov, which goes hand in hand with our topic from last time of movement, so stick around and let's get going. Righto, so today we're going to be going over a few positioning concepts that I think are key to improving your gameplay and should help you be more deliberate and actively conscious of the decisions that you're making in order to get better and ultimately to die less often. This is going to be broadly split into body positioning, peeking with cover, silhouettes, engagements, and map knowledge. However, just before we jump into the main body of discussion, I had a great conversation in the comments with a poster called Seller's Legacy on my last How Not to Die video about movement, which revealed something important that I think is worth addressing first. Not being a military person, I have generally used the phrases hard cover and soft cover to describe rocks versus bushes, for example, but never really thought much more of it. I think originally this distinction probably came from old rule sets of tabletop Warhammer 40,000 or something, given my strategy gaming past, but anyway, the point is that although intuitively it seems obvious that bushes stop you being seen and rocks or buildings stop bullets from hitting you, to actually split these two concepts into cover and concealment allows us to more accurately describe what is going on rather than confusing the two. I'll show the example of what was said here, but it was described in such an intuitive way that I figured I'd use it as is and share it with everyone. So what he said was, soft cover is a couch, hard cover is concrete. Concealment is a different concept in that it affects your visibility. 100% cover and 0% concealment versus small arms is a bulletproof glass box. 100% concealment and 0% cover is a ghillie suit. This is totally intuitive and doesn't fundamentally change our understanding of what we're doing in the game, but it does allow us to more accurately describe various situations, which on its own is a useful tool to clearly convey what is happening. With that said, let's jump into the first concept that we're going to discuss today, which is that of body positioning. What I mean by this is effectively when you're moving around the map using cover and generally making your way through the landscape, we should be thinking about how to hide as much of your PMC's body or hitbox in game terms as possible. Players often reveal too much of their character and end up presenting a large target which is firstly easier to hit, but secondly easier to see. A great example of this is around Shoreline Weather Station, where if you want to cover or engage a certain area for targets, just looking over the hill crest reveals the smallest amount of your player model as possible, putting you at a tactical advantage. Typically, this means not sticking right to the edge of whatever you're shooting over, not until you have to at least, while admittedly it is a bit of a double-edged sword as you get a smaller view of your target area. This way you can pick exactly where you want to be looking at and reducing those sightlines from those that you don't. Because up here, you're in control of your visibility, and in turn the target area that you're presenting downwards too. In this specific situation, this partly just goes to show the power of high ground advantage, but this concept works wherever really. Around objects or up slopes, you want to be in a position to control the amount of body area that you show to other players that they can click on and make you die. So between the two different positions, firstly being really close, kind of up by the rocks there, and secondly being a bit further back, the main difference in this situation is that we're losing sight of the closer areas to the base of the hill, but if we aren't looking there, we're kind of putting ourselves at risk without benefiting from that additional sightline. So if you're not scoping in, and you want to get a broader view of movement generally, and you're not even ADS'd, then that's okay, because you can get a wide view angle, and you're using as much information as possible, and you might even hear somebody if they're running, if they're really close. But if you've seen a target far, and you're using a high-powered optic, and you want to be looking down at the road in this compound, for example, you're better off not being here, because here you're just giving visibility to all people in this area where you're not actually going to be looking. In that particular situation, I think you're much better off being further back. This piece of terrain here kind of covers your body, and if you're going to start an engagement with somebody, they might spot you at long range, but you've got this foliage here which is going to kind of help, and also you can only be seen from this particular angle. All these people over here won't know where you are, especially if you're suppressed, and they won't be able to see you anyway, because all that you can see is this small sliver. So really all I'm saying is that if you're fighting targets at long range, you really just don't want to give away your visibility for free. So if you want wide visibility, you can be seen widely. If you only need narrow visibility, just make sure that you can't be seen from other angles and you're honed in and you're on target, and you're not just going to get one tapped by somebody that you just didn't spot over on the sides or on the flanks. The exact same concept applies when looking through windows, where standing back a bit from the edge helps to mask yourself from framing inside the window pane, where there are many more angles on yourself from other people. Again, this goes hand in hand with having less angles that you can see, but you're in control of this completely, so you can adjust it based on what you're looking at, which means you're more likely to see someone before they see you. Imagine being right up to the window and scoping out. Clearly here there are parts of your visible sightline that you aren't looking at, so why present your own target to those angles? This is something I'm still actively learning in my own play, and it is of course situational, but it's good to keep in mind. Next we're going to discuss right side versus left side peaks and how this applies to cover. The primary tip here is that right hand sided peaks are optimal due to the right handed nature of PMCs and EFT, which means all weapons are shouldered on the right hand side. If I remember correctly, being able to change your stance to left side shouldering has been discussed, but it's clearly not a major feature, so until that's added at some undeterminate time in the future, keep in mind that you'll have an advantage around right handed corners. The reason why is because when you're holding the weapon in the right shoulder, which is the way every gun is held in EFT right now, This means that it's offset from the center of your PMC. The ramification of this is that your body position needs to be further out of cover to shoot at targets around left-hand sided corners, as you can't get the weapon as far across your chest, so you have to make up for it with the overall position of your player. The exact same principle applies to leaning, but even more so, as less of your target is exposed on the right side, which makes right-handed peeking much stronger than left. Incidentally, this is likely the reason there is no left-handed blind fire either, as it would be super awkward in comparison. Not impossible though, of course, but it isn't in the game. In summary, when moving up through cover and planning ahead, keep in mind to fight from the right-hand side of whatever you're using at the time, and get into the habit of having a preference for right-sided engagements where you have a choice, for example through doorways. Next up is silhouettes. These are important when sniping or holding a position so that you don't get spotted easily. Silhouettes are basically shapes that represent an object. In the context of EFT, this happens when your PMC is seen by another player with a background that stands out strongly and makes the part that is blocked by your body super obvious. The classic example is being stood on the ridge of a hill or building where the shape of a body outline is really noticeable against the sky, which is typically very, very bright. The human brain gets quite good at recognising familiar shapes after some experience, which is why veteran players of EFT and other FPS games can spot you and laser you so quickly when you make this mistake. You need to make sure that if you're going to hold an area or an angle for sniping or whatever else, that you don't leave yourself exposed where your silhouette is visible to onlookers. Placing concealment objects like bushes and trees behind you serves two functions. Firstly, it provides a blocker for your silhouette itself, and secondly, given that you're looking forwards and not back, you're less likely to be spotted and shot from behind where you're most vulnerable. This kind of ties into the tip that we were just looking at a second ago. My scav spot is a perfect example of this, and this is where I basically spend a lot of time killing all the scavs at the start of the wipe. Is because you can see the scav house from here, there's the overlook up there, and the sawmill's over there just to kind of get your bearings. But the beauty of this is that there's a small incline down, which makes it really hard to see you from the back. And at the front, you can see there's these leaves covering the whole front section. So when you're lying in this, it's very, very difficult to see you. And normally, I just park myself down in there, embed myself inside these two leaves, and you get the perfect angle out, and you have a really clear scope to see anything in this area. You can pop all the scavs around at scav house, and for other people who are looking back at you, because you've got this nice silhouette coverage here and you're lying at a weird angle, you can't be seen from behind or the front really. It's very, very difficult. I've only ever been spotted here once or twice. Even if someone knows that you might be there, it's just so hard to spot you inside all of this foliage. So it really goes to show the power of silhouettes. Next, we're going to be talking about engagements and two kind of related topics, which are firstly, never re-peek or you'll get your headshot off, and secondly, spotting with a view to move to an advantageous position. Covering re-peeking first, if you're in an active engagement with another player, re-peeking is such a dangerous activity, especially when you're in one of those ranged scope battles. You can be sure that the other player knows where you are, and if you took shots when they last peeked, they'll be ready to go when you pop out the next time. Against good players, they will either not be there at all when you look, or have shifted positions slightly and still have a bead on you. The only exception to this is if you know 100% where someone else is, and they definitely haven't moved, and you can lean out quickly and guarantee a kill before they get time to react back. But it's a high risk maneuver, and you have to be really, really fast to make this work well. If you want some examples of someone who is much better than me that pulls this off all the time, go and check out Glorious E's Twitter feed, which is littered with absolutely gnarly one-tats of this nature. For everybody else, the second peek often ends up landing you back on the main menu. Rather than being tempted to re-peek, always reposition, move, retreat, and basically do anything other than go and look down another PMC's barrel for the second time. I'll likely cover flanking and repositioning in another video in the future, so stay tuned for that one. The other advice for engagements that I wanted to touch on today is to be selective with your fights. Sometimes you see someone but they're either too far away or they were just too fast to react to as they move from cover to cover in the distance. You don't need to try to engage everyone that you see, and I'm sure we've all been in the situation where we regret taking a shot that scares someone off who didn't know that you were there before that now does and never reappears. In those situations, if you can think of where they are very likely to be, you can spot them and then move to an advantageous position instead to engage them a second time on your own terms. Ah. Okay, there goes somebody. So somebody's gone up there. Can we use this to our advantage? You don't have to shoot right away, and you can use all of these elements that we've talked about to ensure that you get a free shot or a chance to get a kill with no risk, which ultimately is what Tarkov is about. We never want to be fighting a fair fight if we can help it. Put yourself in a tactical advantage and enjoy surviving more often. Finally, many of these principles only improve as your map knowledge improves. However, there are some very specific pieces of knowledge in EFT that can be amazing when used well. Tarkov is littered with little gaps in terrain and has far more of these spots than any other game I've played. Use the graduated lean and variable crouch stances to get these spots just right. Even if they are too tight to shoot through, sometimes you can find certain spots where you can see through just a sliver with visibility on a doorway or an entrance, and that tells you if someone is coming or not, which allows you to take the initiative and kill them with a surprise attack. If you learned something or enjoyed today's video and want to support the channel, please as always consider sending a like and a comment, as it helps with visibility for those who haven't found me yet on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter and Twitch to check out when I'm live, which is currently 2 times a week, once on Friday at 9 PM UK time for the real-time recording of the ScavTalk podcast, which you can check out the link to in the description below, and a regular Tarkov stream on Saturday at 2 PM UK time in the afternoon. And with all that said, I'll see you next time, and as always, have fun in your raids.